Hello everyone. Thanks for coming today to the archives. If you haven't been here, welcome. And I'm Tyler. Today we have with us Michael Hull.
You're all wrong.
I almost said Kiava, but what was the term?
Kuiava,
Kuiava, excuse me.
if you want the Polish pronunciation. I think I'm correct there, right, Joe? All right.
But today he is going to talk about a brief history of pottery in Butte and also a history of the Hungry Hill Art Center. And then what the Hungry Hill Art Center means to the people of Butte and its programs like this one, the Empty Bowls program. And this year that will be on April 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Butte Civic Center. And that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. All right, so I am Mike Kuiava, and I am a teacher, not a public speaker. So there is a big difference between the two. If you have a question during the presentation, please raise your hand and just yell it out or whatever. Don't wait to the end because I'll forget what we were talking about. And also, if you have to go to the restroom, that's the #1 question teachers get. Just go, all right? You know where they're at. You don't have to ask. I got my cheat notes over here just in case I forget what I'm talking about. Basically, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to start out and just kind of go chronological through some pottery stuff and then talk about Hungry Hill and about Empty Bowls and that, and just give you an introduction. I know there's some people that have never heard of Hungry Hill in here, so that'll be fun. And I was just, to start off with the name, Hungry Hill, there was a mountain up in Walkerville that was called Hungry Hill. There's also one in Ireland. But what I remember as Hungry Hill is my dad, when we were very little, he had a printing, we printed t-shirts in our garage. And him and his buddy, Don Cooney, they called it the Hungry Hill Horse Trading Company. And if you know what horse trading is, it's what politicians do a lot of. Did you bring your admittance slip? Are you in late? So, Hungry Hill, it's something I wanted to keep in mind, and I'll talk more about that when we get towards the end. It was just interesting when I walked in here. One of the ladies in there was researching a 1923 football team, and they were the Double Gulch Crusaders. But they also call themselves the Hungry Hill Crusaders. And they actually practiced in the Never Sweat Mine Yard.
The Comanches.
Oh, Comanches?
Of Hungry Hill.
Oh, the Comanches of Hungry Hill. So, 1923 football team around that time period. She's looking for names. The names that are on the sheet that we got are pretty interesting. There's some distant relatives in there. Okay, so, start off with pottery in Montana. Very rarely do you find pottery shards in Montana. If you have more questions about indigenous pottery, gentleman in the back with the green hat on, Victor Kuiava, he does a lot of archaeology in Montana. But the main things they find are from the Shoshone and the Crow in the mountains. They call it the Intermountain area. And then they also found some from the Fremont people, Fremont pottery that moved up into south central Montana. But those are the two to three major types of pottery we found. Victor knows a lot more about it than I do. But just to start off, there was pottery here from 800 AD. I don't know, did you guys find anything earlier than 800 AD?
In like Wyoming, we found like 6,000 old stuff.
Yeah, so so pottery is one of the original art forms. It is used to carry stuff, store stuff, cook stuff. Very functional type of art. And it wasn't until the 1930s that contemporary pottery really started coming back. If you think about the industrial age, we became kind of fixated on mass production. So everything was mass produced. We did ceramics, not pottery, where they molded everything. They did slip casting, they did kind of presses that press pottery into shapes and things like that. So a lot of the pottery that was made in the early 1900s was all mass produced. It wasn't until the Great Depression and going into and out of World War II that they really started bringing back the pottery wheel and talking about pottery as an art form. And so who knows anything about Fiesta ware, by the way? That was highly produced. Does anybody know where it was produced at?
Mexico, I guess.
Mexico, or New Mexico. It was actually produced in West Virginia, and it's still being produced there today, along the Ohio River. And one of the reasons why Fiesta ware became so popular, it was during the Great Depression. They got really colorful colors going. And those colors were kind of helped you get through the doldrums. You know, and they had potteries there for years before that, but their pottery at that time, that's when they got the really bright colors. Also, if you're a collector of Fiesta ware, I think it's the orange, has uranium in it. And you can use a Geiger counter to find that type of Fiesta ware. We do not use uranium anymore. We also don't use lead. We'll talk a little more about the chemistry in a while. But those are the things that, let's keep Tyler in charge. Those are the types of things that were mass produced. Coming into World War II and then out of World War II, there was a movement started into bringing pottery back as a functional art and bringing the pottery wheel back. Ceramic Monthly, it's a magazine that we all use in the pottery world. Originally, it was all about ceramics, about casting and slip casting and mass producing stuff. And then their articles started showing up about these potters, and potters starting to make functional ware again. Probably the most famous is Bernard Leach, who came out of England, and he spent some time in Montana. And Amanda, I can't think of his last name, came out of Japan and spent some time in Montana. And they spent it up at the Archie Bray. And the Archie Bray is up in Helena. It's an old brickyard that has a lot of history with pottery up there. But it all started with one person. Her name was Frances Senska, who was educated in France, came to Montana State University, and she, in her first class, met two guys. One was from Bozeman, one was from Butte. Rudy Audio graduated from Butte High School, went into the service. Peter Volkus graduated over in Bozeman, went into the service. They're both veterans. After World War II, they go to school on the GI Bill, meet Frances Senska. She introduces them during the summertime to Archie Bray, who ran the brickyard. And he had always been fascinated with pottery. And they had to make bricks during the day, and then they helped set up a pottery at night. And that's where the Archie Bray started out. So a young man from Butte who served his country and then started making pots. So those two basically were the first directors of the Bray. Rudy Audio went on to, he's pretty world famous with his artwork, but he taught at University of Montana. So even University of Montana, the Grizz, have their roots in Montana State University, and I always like to remind everybody of that. Huh?
Create a little fight.
There's no fight this year. I think they laid down pretty well. So, I had the honor, and this is just a little side note, Rudy Audio's niece, or granddaughter, Phoebe Audio, was living here in Butte and became one of our first members at the Hungry Hill. So I love how the history wraps around.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta see where we're going with this. I feel like a politician. I start rambling and go sideways. I better stay on my notes, right? So, I did have the chance to go to Francis Senska's house when I was about 10 or 11 years old. So my dad, he graduated from Western. He had an IA degree, industrial arts degree in art, and he started teaching at West Junior High in 1972. And when he was teaching there, they actually had a couple pottery wheels that weren't actually ever used. They were kick wheels. Kick wheel's the one where you sit on the chair and kick your foot around and it gets the wheel going, and you know, it's really good during blackouts. Really hard for junior high kids to be able to do that, unless you're a big kid. But so he's already done a little bit of pottery, got very interested. When he was student teaching, there's a couple names in Butte that I don't know, some of you guys may know who they were, but Clarice Richards, she did a lot of pottery for us. She did some empty bowls for us. Back in the day, she used to teach pottery in her house. And she was also a Shimpo dealer. And a Shimpo is a Japanese pottery wheel. And so my dad started buying them from her. First, he student taught at Central, took kids up to her house to learn pottery, and then started the pottery at West Junior High. She would sell Shimpo wheels as a dealer, and there were these small little Japanese wheels that we still have down in the pottery today. We don't use them as pottery wheels anymore, but we still have them. And I think there's 5 of them down there. So my dad started the pottery then, went back for his master's degree. I was probably about 10 years old, 10, 11 years old, and he was in a wood fire class, hauled all the firewood over from Butte, fired Francis Senska's wood kiln at her house. And I think she was fairly old then, but it was really cool to have that in back of my mind, that we still connect back to that original beginning. So I decided to be a scientist. I went to school to be a science teacher, and I learned a lot about chemistry, physics, things like that. Walked through the pottery one day. I'd been doing pottery since I was probably 5 years old, was the first bowl I ever threw. Walked through the pottery over there and looked at what the kids were doing, and I thought, I can do this. So I ended up getting a degree in art as well, and my chemistry background helped me with my pottery. I started teaching in 1992, did 3 years down in Soda Springs, Idaho, and then I came back and started teaching at the high school, science and art, and I was able to do a nice 7-year apprenticeship with my dad. He retired in 2002. I retired in 2022. So between 1972 and 2022, we had 50 years of teaching pottery to the students of Butte. So we have numerous people out there in the community that have done pottery with us. There's another lady that also did pottery, Mrs. Koch. Her husband was the president of, I guess it'd be the president of Montana Tech. No.
Mines.
School mines. Did your phone just go off?
I'm sorry.
Gonna have to turn you in.
I know. You want to take my phone?
So Mrs. Koch, her husband was the president of the school mines and did pottery. One of her wheels was donated to my dad at West Junior High. I think that's one of the wheels we still have. And so we have gained greatly from the community as that part goes. We had a couple other wheels that have been donated through the years. Does anybody remember Frank Whitney? Frank Whitney was a potter here during the late 80s, early 90s. Came from Montana State University. Did a lot of work with us up at the high school for a few years while he was here. But that's about all I know about the potters in Butte. There wasn't that many. There are a lot now, but there wasn't that many during those first early years. Okay, so with that, any questions yet? One of the things that we were able to do as we built that pottery up and then we got to the high school is it was not only the pottery, it was the whole art department. We taught many different mediums: printmaking, metalsmithing, casting, drawing, painting, and the pottery and sculpture. So all those things were at the high school. One of the areas that probably was the most popular is pottery. Pottery is a very accessible art form. Even if you're just a novice, you can get into it. You can learn. And it doesn't matter if you're 60 or 6, you're pretty much starting at the same level, but you can learn. It's not as demanding as drawing and painting is. It's a different form that you can actually do. That's why we started out with pottery at Hungry Hill. One of the things that we did at the high school is we started teaching night school. A friend of ours, Greg Edlund, was the night school teacher. Did it for many years while I was teaching there. I teach in the day, he'd teach at night. At some point in time, somebody came up with the idea about empty bowls. Now, empty bowls is a nationwide push to help feed the hungry. Here in town, I did it a couple times. I did it for a spay and neuter clinic. I did it for something else, and then we started doing it for the backpack program. The backpack program is a program that started around 2010, 2011, and what it is to feed children that are food insecure on the weekends. So they get free lunch, free breakfast at school, but they don't have anything to eat on the weekend. Whether circumstances, whether abuse, whether whatever it is, they don't have any food. So they started a program where they give a package of food and put it in their backpack on Fridays to see how they would react by Monday. And right away we noticed that when we're giving the kids the food, they didn't come to school hungry on Monday morning. They're more likely ready to work, ready to learn, instead of searching out trying to find a meal. And so that's where the backpack program came from. Zhao Hong and Kathy Griffith from the food bank, myself, Greg, my dad, many other people really got involved with doing the empty bowls. The first year was a disaster. We made 660 bowls. We had it down at the Front Street Station, and too many people showed up.
Ran out of soup.
Ran out of soup, ran out of bowls. They kept letting people in. It was a nightmare. And so that's when we moved the Civic Center at second year. This year is going to be year number 13. The kids that are seniors today were the kids that were in kindergarten the year we started. So we did a generation of kids. And it just built up every year. One of the things we noticed is it became a great community event. If you haven't been to it, you should go. It's just a fun night. You get all the soups from all the different restaurants. They're all commercially made. They bring those in, they heat them up. You do not eat the soup out of the bowls. And everybody always asks why they can't eat the soup out of the bowls. And we figured early on, everybody's going in there and touching all those bowls. Yeah, really bad. So that's why we don't feed it in the bowls themselves. It's been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. About 5 years ago, they said we need to raise more money, we have more kids. And we thought, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep the $20 ticket, because a lot of our people are elderly that go to it. And so one thing they can do is actually afford to go to it. If we start raising the tickets, then it never stops. And then you price out people. So instead, that's when we started doing the $50 and the $100 bowls and trying to get people and we actually made a lot more money that way than it would have been raising that $5 ticket. One of the other problems we had, and I know some of you people were here early in, we serpentined so everybody could see the bowls. And it took an hour and a half just to get through the line to get your bowl. And I know that there's a lot of shoppers out there. They like to pick up every bowl and look at it. So that next year, we just set them all out in that back gym. And I do have I wish I could find the video clip, but I had a clip of it and it was shortened down a little bit. But within 15 minutes, most of the bowls were gone because we just let everybody flood in there to get the bowls, and it worked out really good. 2022 comes along, I'm retiring, my sister's retiring. We start wondering what's going to happen to empty bowls, because as an art teacher, you're hired as an art teacher, not as a pottery teacher or a painting teacher. You're an art teacher. So whatever artist comes in next may do pottery, may not do pottery, may have different ways. And we can't really invade the room like we did when I was teaching at the high school. I had a great room, great access for the potters, but even the night school went away since I left. So there was no pottery being taught at the high school right now, except for very small groups. And so when I was retiring, my sister and I talked about it, and he said it's the perfect time to either walk away from empty bowls or do something different. And the difference we did is what we made was Hungry Hill. And we're gonna go through a little bit about what Hungry Hill is and that, but that's where Hungry Hill was born. Not just to be an art center, but to do empty bowls and continue that on. We started out with the pottery. It's the most accessible for people to get into. And we knew that we could sell classes. We knew we could sell memberships and that kind of stuff. And one of the first decisions we made was to make it a nonprofit. We decided nobody should make money off of it. You can hire teachers, hire directors, hire, people to do stuff. But we didn't want it to be a profit, a for-profit company, because we're mainly just doing stuff that is beneficial to the community. And that's what we wanted to be. So when we walk away, it continues on. So we do have a board of directors. I am the director of Hungry Hill. Been there for 3 years now. They've given me 2 raises. So the first year I was making 0. Then they doubled it. Then they doubled it again. So that's where I'm sitting. We have 2 board members here today, my dad and Judy. And Judy's one of our art teachers as well. She teaches the hand building and the pottery. So Hungry Hill, nonprofit, we get it up and running, get substantial help from the food bank to get us started and get a lot of grants going. And that's the other thing with nonprofit, there's a lot more grant money than there is if you're doing a for-profit. And so we started up Hungry Hill. I don't know if I can get to, maybe not. There we go. Well, it's really tough for you to read on here, but it's a flow chart. And we decided there's 3 tenets we wanted to do. 1, we're going to teach art. We're going to have a place to do art. That's the backbone of the creative process. And the second part was the education, and the third part was outreach. So the first part, art, we have to make it accessible. We have to have equipment there. We have to have a good studio for people to work in. And that's where we have membership. And somebody's asking me about membership earlier. We now have 50 plus members of Hungry Hill that have 24/7 access to the pottery. They pay $55 a month to have access. They can use all the clay they want, but then they have to pay a kiln fee, which is based on cubic inches that they take up in the kiln. So those members really are the backbone and for all the costs that we incur. Then the education part is not only educating people on, how you use art, what's art for, how to do the pottery wheel, how to do hand building, what are a glaze. Thank God I went to chemistry class all the time because we make all our own glazes. We get all our clay from the Archie Bray. And we have a good time up there. Then the last part is the outreach. The outreach is empty bowls. That's our number one priority every year, is to do empty bowls. But we also do, we worked with the curling club. Curling's really big right now, especially on the Olympics. And we made mugs for them to give out their Bonspiel. I think I said that right. Which they have the big tournament down at the ice rink every fall. And we help them raise money for their club. We do, I've had Head Start up at the studio. I've had elementary classes up at the studio. We, and of no cost to the Head Start or to the public schools. We just bring them in, teach them, and send them on their way. They have a good time. We do, we're looking at other things that we can be doing in the community. We help with the ice carving, we do things like that. But one of probably the most important things we do is we have a veterans group. So on Friday nights, we have veterans from 5 to 7 that can come in free of charge, learn to do pottery, hang out with other veterans. I look back at Rudy Audio and Peter Vokas being a veteran, my dad being a veteran, that it's very important to give that place, those people a place that's safe and kind of can help them out. And so we probably have 20 different veterans come in and out all the time, and it's a really good group. We have an art therapist, one of my former students, that works with the VA. She comes in, and she's actually helped out quite a few different people getting into the VA through that group. And so that's one of the more important outreach things that I see us doing. One of the best parts about it all, though, is the community that we've started to form. We have 2 young ladies. If you can, get over to the Clark Chateau and see a pottery show that's up there right now. They're open from 12 to 4 on Friday, 12 to 4 on Saturday. But Alona Wild, she's one of our members and our teacher, and Rachel Margima, she's another member and teacher. They have a beautiful pottery show up there right now. Rachel's also the one that painted the mural on the side of the aisle of books, and you'll see that reflected in her pottery. It's very decorative. But those 2 are wonderful, and they would have never met if we didn't have the pottery studio here in town. We have a young guy, his name's Corey, who came to Veterans Night, sat by the door because he didn't want to be in a weird group, singing Kumbaya and every other thing. So he sat by the door, kind of was like, okay, if this gets weird, I'm out of here. He is now on our board of directors. He's a teacher, and he loves it. He's the one that gets a lot of the different veterans to come in now. He says it's like nothing he's ever seen before, and he's a combat vet. And he's probably 40 years old, 35, 40 years old, somewhere in there. So there's this range of people that we're starting to get and bring them together. And they all tell me they never would have met if it wasn't for the studio. And one of the things we always talked about Hungry Hill is our mission is to build a community. And that community should last much longer than what we are and continue to move through it. I probably skipped a lot of stuff. So, the name Hungry Hill, the reason why I picked it, not only because it was my dad's name for his business, but I always looked at it, I was always told we live on the hill, and we're feeding the hungry with empty bowls. That's kind of we went that way, and that name has a lot of other history. Empty bowls right now, it's kind of surprising. It's 13th year, but we've raised over $800,000 for the food bank. We've made over 14,000 pieces of pottery. And this year, if you go, you're gonna see a lot more cups, vases, and other objects there beside bowls, so that you have a selection. one of the things we heard is, I don't know what to do with all these bowls I keep getting. They just keep stacking up. So a lot of coffee cups, mugs, wine goblets, things like that. So you'll see a lot of new stuff there. Over the years, we've done over 500 different pots of soup from the community. So they bring in 4 gallons or 5 gallon buckets full of soup. And the soup is amazing from around, and it's all commercially produced. But they went from doing chicken soup to, oh, we can step up our game now. And so there's a lot of soups. I've yet to get a bowl of soup at the event though. I hear a lot about it, but I never get to see it.
We've heard about it.
They compete for the,
Yes.
each restaurant competes.
Yeah, and we talked about having a competition, but we decided not to do that because we want everybody to be involved. We don't want hurt feelings out there. We've done 135,000 backpack meals over the years. I saw at the last school board meeting I was at, we're feeding 500 kids at West, 190 kids at Kennedy. Just numbers that are unbelievable right now. And things are tight right now. So we are feeding a lot of kids on the weekends. And we continue to do that during the summer months also. About 100 volunteers that help put on the event. It's massive. We have the Ancient Order of Hibernians back there, making sure everybody gets their bowls and gets out of the room in an orderly manner. We have these 2 young ladies up here who are on our director's board. Afterwards, if anybody wants to buy tickets, we have tickets available because it's tough to find tickets sometimes. So there are tickets available here today. So back to our members. I've been going through their information the last couple weeks, and I've found that over half of them were either my student or my dad's student that came up through the ranks. The other half seem to be coming from other places though. They're not from Butte. They moved here at some point or other. They've come in, they've come looking for something to do, and we have one gentleman's on our board is from Anaconda, and he moved here from, I can't remember now, back east somewhere. But he lives in Anaconda. He's on our board, works for Best Buy from home. And it's very interesting to see the people that are migrating to the Pottery. And I think one of the things that the community forgets sometimes is we have to have more than just a bar. We have to have something for people to do. And that's why we're working on Hungry Hill becoming a bigger and better art center all the time.
Oops, that was not mine.
Uh-oh. It's not me, Fran.
Oh, there's another.
So, we're an art center. We're not meant to be just a pottery. That was the easiest place to go, even though it's probably the most expensive equipment-wise. So the future of Hungry Hill is to bring in glass blowing, which we're getting the equipment for, blacksmithing, which we have equipment for, metalsmithing, painting, drawing, printmaking, which we have equipment for already, and to expand what we do as an art center and be a full-fledged art center, not just a pottery studio. And the way we look at doing that is through grants and everything else. Our biggest problem is space right now. And Barb Miller has given us a wonderful space for the pottery, and they're working on the building, but it's going to be a long, slow haul for that. We're also looking at becoming a multi-site school. We don't have to be in one place. And so one of the things we're doing is partnering up with Walkerville, and you may have seen it in the news, but the Blaine School, it either needs to be torn down or it needs to be fixed. It's the first thing you see going up Main Street into Walkerville, and it's not a real pretty sight. So we're partnering up with them. We hope to, right now we're working with the DEQ, Brownsfield, and Pioneer Technical to go in there and see what kind of asbestos and lead is in there. It was built in the late 1950s, so it's all asbestos and lead. So they're going to clean that up, and then we have some great ideas how to turn that back into a venue for Walkerville, as well as having a place to do painting, drawing, and some other stuff up there. So that's kind of partnerships that we hope to do. And why I say a partnership, if we were to try to go alone, we can only do so much. If Walkerville tried to go alone as a municipality, they can only do so much. But if we combine, then there's a lot more power to do a lot of things up there. And it's a beautiful site, absolutely beautiful site. Are you two talking?
Yeah.
Some things never change.
Once a teacher,
But,
always a
so that's the future that we look for Hungry Hill, is to get into those type of areas where we can expand, find places to teach classes, and continue building that community. And there are some cards up here that will get you directly to the website. Okay, and this will take you there if you're interested, or if you know people that are interested in doing classes or workshops. We do a lot of our classes. We do beginning, advanced, hand building, those type of classes right now. We have workshops on raku. We're putting together a workshop on casting, metal casting. We have a furnace for a foundry that will be doing sand casting and colloidal silica lost wax casting. And then hopefully we'll get the glass blowing up by the end of summer, is what I'm looking at. And once we do the glass blowing, I think that's going to be a really big draw. We just have to get some hurdles, get over the hurdles for that one. The other sheet gives you a little bit of a synopsis on Hungry Hill. Things that I may have touched on, may have not, but it's just who we are, what we value, and our services. And then, of course, my phone number is right down at the bottom, because we couldn't afford a phone number when we first started. And so my phone number's on everything, so leave me a message and I'll get back to you. Questions? I know I went through kind of where Pottery started, where it's going, and what happened in between to get us to where we're at now. And I think Hungry Hill is a wonderful place. I don't know if I can get into some of these things. Tyler's gonna come up and help me, right? Yep. Oh, there we go. On our website, you can find our mission, what we're about, and things that we have coming up is something like just Saturday clay, bread pans. And you go in and you learn how to make one. It's just a simple, everybody does the same thing, everybody gets into it. And those are the type of workshops that we can do for people. The classes, I'm gonna go to there. Let's see. It's hard looking at it this way.
Is it courses and workshops, the top one?
I think it's on this screen too, if you want to look at it.
Oh, yeah. You know, that'd be too easy, Tyler. What are we doing? Does anybody have any questions while I'm playing on the computer?
Nice website.
the top one, right there.
Yeah, I was on that one already. I don't know where the courses are.
Well, because we're already into them.
Yeah, we're well into them. But right now we'll finish out our courses in right at the end of February, beginning of March. Then we take a month off because we have to figure out how many more bowls we need. So we spend the rest of March making bowls for empty bowls. The event is April 8th. If you come and make something for empty bowls, then you're invited to the artist reception, which is on April 7th, which we put out all the bowls in that back gym and stand around and look at them and drink wine and Vic tries to find all his bowls.
And might you let people
Yep.
know when the next empty bowl making is?
The next community event's March 7th and 8th. And so if you're not doing anything, you can come in and glaze or help out, and we teach them how to make a hand bowl, a handmade bowl. If you know how to use the pottery wheel, you can come in and do that.
Where's your actual address?
So right now, the pottery is in the Phoenix building.
Oh,
The Phoenix building is owned by National Affordable Housing, Barb Miller's group, Barb and George Everett. And then they do all the habitat houses out of there. And they're working on 3rd floor right now. They're gonna try to set up habitat houses or apartments on 3rd floor and redo all the windows in the building. That's their approach right now. One of the problems we have right now is we don't have restrooms downstairs if you go in the door on Dakota Street, you have the main Stoke Gallery, 2 yoga places, and then our pottery. But we don't have access to the elevator or the restrooms yet. And so we've been holding off doing, we did one class, and my dad was probably one of the youngest ones there teaching it. It was fairly elderly, and we had a great time, but the bathrooms are all the way upstairs. We don't have use of the elevator, and it's 2 steps to get into there, so it makes it very difficult on some people to get in there. So we're not handicap accessible yet. Then the other problem is they're going to be doing that and other construction in there, so we're not sure if we're going to get displaced right for a while or not. But that's in the actual Phoenix building. The building behind there is one I'm really interested in. It's the old warehouse. So it's on Galena, right across from the post office. That's where our kilns are. If you ever drive by there and that big garage door is open, feel free to stop by and take a look at our kilns and the pots. That's where all the empty bowls are right now. I think we're right around 800 bowls made. So we got about another 450 to go. So we're getting there.
So how do you make the pots, let's say, food safe?
All of our glazes are food safe. We fire cone 10, and cone 10 is 2,372 degrees Fahrenheit. And what that does is it vitrifies the clay, so the clay itself melts together inside the pot, so the water can't be absorbed into it. And then all our glazes are food safe. We don't use lead or uranium or anything else anymore, although they make some beautiful colors. So, not too long ago, I was going through some of our old stuff and I found a bucket of lead. I got to figure out what to do with lead powder. I think I'll just pass it on to my nephew and say, it's your turn, because I know where it came from. They used to use it quite a bit in low fire clay. So low fire, cone 04 and up to cone 6, that mid-range firing, what happens is the clay doesn't become vitrified. So if you are just washing your pots, if you had like a white plate and the only part that's exposed, the clay is exposed to the surrounding is the ring on the bottom, the foot of the pot, it'll suck water in because it's not vitrified yet. So that's why we always go to a higher temperature. If you go to a restaurant and you see a black ring on the top of your white plate, that's because there's mold growing inside the plate in that water. And that's part of the problem. So that's why we go to cone 10. We do all our stuff at cone 10. Temperature just to vitrify that clay, won't absorb any water. And the other problem is if you see little cracks in your glazes, the same thing can happen. Water can go through the cracks and then start growing mold. So the best thing is to use a high temperature dishwasher. Did that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
So how did the indigenous people get to that town?
They didn't.
They didn't.
No. So most of the indigenous people were firing wood fire because they have on wood fires. There's a story about how pottery was originally made. Was, animals getting in your food, so you make a basket. You put the basket next to your fire to keep the animals away from your food, the basket burns. So what do? Well, you notice that there's this muddy down by the creek, so you rub it all over that basket to keep it from burning. the basket burns out and you're left with a ceramic shell. So that's kind of one fable of how pottery began. And it was all about putting your container of food somewhere safe, so the animals didn't get into it. But everything that they did was very low temperature, and that's very fragile. We're going to do an indigenous pottery class next September. We had a young woman here from Arizona that's a wood fire potter. She spoke here last summer, I think. Her name was Olivia, and she came up for 5 weeks with us and did pottery, and she went out and dug clay. We also have Jody Gear down at the main stove who does wild clay. They're going to put on a class next September. They're going to go out and dig some clay, process it, fire it, and see how high a temperature they can get some of the fire to. Usually we have to add something to the clay to get it up to cone 10. Some of the clay actually will turn into a glaze that you can actually glaze your pot with because it melts so quickly. Question? No. I'm gonna give him a bad time, bump him before he starts falling asleep. Any other, yes?
I have a question for Victor. Did they find any pottery with the ancient boy?
Oh, I don't think so. He was like 10,000 years, 12,000 years old?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. Most of the pottery in Montana that's Native American is also Mandan. And that's a couple hundred years old and came up to Missouri. And that 6,000-year-old stuff was all like little figurines. Like we have like an antelope figurine and squares and snakes and stuff. Because the cooking ovens were dug in the ground and it was all gumbo clay out there. So they're sitting there around cooking fires, throwing in little things they made. So it wasn't even pottery, like vessels back then. It was just fired clay doodads. But yeah, Anzig and Kennewick and all the, they're Clovis, really old, and I don't know of any clay that old that survived in North America. So unless you go like south.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I made it to 45 minutes.
What's the difference between blacksmithing and metalsmithing?
So what we call metalsmithing would be cold fabrication. So where you have the metal and you're either cold fabricating it, making objects, making jewelry, making metal sculptures. Blacksmithing is where you're using iron and hammering it on the anvil. And we also solder in metalsmithing.
Okay.
But you can solder blacksmithing too.
Okay.
You know, so I think it's just, what would you say, Dad? I'll give you the floor.
We called it jewelry at the high school. They called it metalsmithing at the college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Difference on it. But then blacksmithing was taught at MSU for a while. Because we brought, I got a blacksmith automatic hammer from the Badger mine and took it over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they had that in the jewelry department over there.
Okay.
Yeah, the smallest one that was on the hill, that's why we brought that one. There were much larger ones that we wouldn't even look at, but we found a littler one at the Badger mine.
Okay.
Brought it over.
Wow.
So blacksmithing would be mainly iron, all iron, and metalsmithing would be copper, gold, silver, and alloys as such, right?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, I do have tickets if you want any. Other than that, take a card, get in contact with us if you're interested, or pass it on to somebody else that might be interested. But thank you for coming today. Appreciate it.
That's really good. Thank
Did I
you.
do okay?
Mike's off.
Okay. Yeah, open mic, open mic.
Come up and sing.